Okay, here we go with solving a system of equations that have 3 variables in them. Okay, one of the things I want you to recognize is once we get to this format, we can solve this system. Notice I have z already identified. Z is equal to 3. So then I could take that information and plug it in right there, right? So I have y minus 6, 2 times 3 equals negative 7. So I could add 6 to both sides, and I'd get negative 1. So now I have y figured out. And so then I could take my z, plug it here, take my 1, plug it there, negative 1 rather, and then I could figure out my x. So just kind of working my way through here, I'd have x. Again, y is negative 1, so negative 2 times negative 1 would be positive 2. My z is 3. And that's supposed to equal 7. Okay, so x plus 5 equals 7. So x must be 2. So I can solve this. And what I want you to recognize is that once you get to this sort of a layout where I have 0x but 1y, I have 0x and 0 y's and 1z in this equation, I can solve this system without any issues at all. And so this is just kind of, I want you to show you how we're going to use our matrices to get to this point. We're going to put this in a matrix. Okay, so imagine matrices from yesterday or the day before. We will enter this in as a 1, negative 2, 1, 7 row, a 0, 1, negative 2, negative 7 row, and a 0, 0, 1, 3 row. But when we get to this point where we have ones here, it's like that identity matrix where I have that, then we can solve it. Okay, and so I'm going to show you that's what your calculator is doing, is it's getting your matrix to this point, so where you can actually solve your equation. That's called row echelon form. Okay, but we're going to first practice getting our matrices set up and then solving them on our calculator. So the calculator is going to be key, okay? Hopefully you have your own calculator or know where to get the link to that calculator. It should be in your Google Forms or Google Classroom. All right, so let's put it in a matrix representation. We have 3 rows. 1, let's see, 1, here's my y's, 2, 3, 4 columns, right? So if I'm going to put that, those 3 equations into a matrix, we're just going to keep everything lined up. I have 1x, negative 1y, 1z equal to 0. Notice I don't put any equal signs. I don't put any plus or minuses unless it's a negative 1. Then we keep it there. 2x. I don't have any y's, so I do need to keep that as a placeholder. So 0 y's. Negative 3 equals negative 1. Okay. Negative 1y, I'm sorry, negative 1x, followed by negative 1y plus 2z and negative 1. Okay, so when you set up your matrix equations, you are just entering the coefficients of each of the variables, but each column is a certain variable. This is the x column, this is the y column, this is the z column in this case, and then this would be your constants, okay? And so make sure that you're lining everything up, okay? Don't put a y in an x column or vice versa, okay? But that would be how that matrix is entered in. And then we're going to use something called reduced row echelon form to solve it. So your calculator is going to do all this crazy work and it's going to do it in a split second. What we want to do is just show you what your calculator is kind of doing so you understand what's going on. How is it able to just pop out that answer? So what it does is it does some of these row operations. You can interchange any of the equations. You can multiply the equations by anything you want. You can add some of those equations together. Those are all fine things that it does. And then it's going to put it in this row echelon form. Okay, row echelon form is what we just showed you. You have a 1 for x, and then a 0 and a 1, then a 0, a 0, and a 1. You have numbers here, numbers here, and then numbers here. It'll put it into row echelon form if you ask it to. It will put it in reduced row echelon form if you ask it for that echelon. And this is the one that I would do, and we will do. We're going to do R, R, E, F, and what that is it's that identity matrix. It's 1, 1, 1 on the diagonal, all zeros, even on the top. Okay, and then you'll have a number, a number, and a number, and these are your answers over here. Okay, because what it's telling you, remember, these are your x's, your y's, and your z's. So it's telling you 1x plus 0y plus 0z equals this. In other words, 1x equals this. This is telling you 0x plus 1y plus 0z, or in other words, 1y equals this number, and 1z equals that number. So this is where we're really headed for, and the calculator is going to do all this crazy math for us. It does these row echelon operations, and so here's just a sample of what some of those operations are. Like I said, you can interchange any rows. You can multiply a row by any number you want to, and then you can add any rows together so that your calculator does all this math really quickly, so that you get a 1 here, a 1 here, and a 1 here. You know, so and 0, 0, 0. So it's doing all of that. So here's just what it can do. So you can do a row 1 plus a row 3. So these are row operations, and we're going to ask you to do a couple row operations. So what's a row 1 plus a row 3? Okay, so here's row 1, here's row 3. Okay. So what happens is I can take this row and I can add it to that row. Everything stays the same except for where you're adding it to. So notice that doesn't change, that doesn't change. But if I add it to this row, this is the row that's going to change. So that I would get a -1 if I add those two together. If I add this row with that row here, these elements, I would get a -5. And if I add this to that, I would get, what, a 2? Okay. So that row operation would generate this matrix. Okay. So you turn that into a -1, a -5, and into everything else stay the same. Here's just another example of some row operations that they want us to do. So it says take 3 times row 2. So we're going to take this whole row, multiply it by 3, and then we're going to add it to row 3. We're going to add it to that one. Okay. So again, row 1 doesn't change. Row 2 doesn't change in our answer. It's row 3 that's going to change because that's where we're adding it to. Okay. What we're adding is 3 times this row and add it to that. Okay. So let's just do that. So 3 times 1 is 3. Add it here, you get 0. 3 times this is 6. Add it here, you get 7. And 3 here is times -3 is -9. Add it to that, you get -11. Okay. So this would actually be something your calculator would do, along with multiple other steps, but it got us a 0 right here, and that's something that we'd want. We want to get it into reduced row echelon form. So we got a 0 here. We'd want to get a 0 here. We'd want to get a 0 here, and we'd want to turn these into 1s. Right? So your calculator is doing all these crazy row operation things, and it's making all of this happen. They're getting 0s here, 1s here, and it's spitting out an answer to you in just seconds. Less than a second in most cases. It takes longer to enter it all in than it does to get an answer. Okay, so we're going to show you how to do that. How do you do this reduced row echelon form so you can get x, y, and z answers, the answers to all of your variables? Okay. So first we got to enter this in, right? So keep in mind you're going to enter this in as just coefficients. So we have a 2, a 1, a -1, a 0, a -1, a 2, a -3, and a 7. So we'll enter that in, okay, to our calculator as matrix A. Okay, so I'll just call it matrix A. And then what we're going to do, after we enter that in, then we're going to do R, R, E, F on our calculator, matrix A. That's what we're going to actually do. So let me show you how that happened. So you go into matrix, go to edit. Remember, it's the size. So this is 3 rows, 4 columns, or 3 by 4. So we'll enter that in. Okay. And then we're just going to go into math and get RREF, matrix A. So again, I'll try and show you that on your calculator here in just a moment. All right, so second matrix. And again, I'm going to edit. First off, I'm going to edit a 3 by 4. Okay? And I've already typed it in. 1, -1, 2, -3, 2, and so on. So there's all in there, okay, as you would as well. Okay, so I'm just going to quit, okay, because I want to go back to the screen where I do all my math. And then I'm going to do second matrix. One more time, I'm going to highlight over to this math menu. And RREF is in here. It's just really down low, like choice B, as in boy, if I remember correctly. So I'm going to arrow all the way down till I see choice A is REF. I want RREF, which is choice B. Okay, see that there? Hit that. And then this is where I put matrix A. So I'm going to just do second matrix and select option A. So notice how it's entered into the calculator as such. Hit enter. And then it gives me that reduced row echelon form. Okay. Remember, 1x equals -2, 1y equals 7, and 1z equals 3. So it gives me those 3 variables, okay, on your calculator screen, just like that. Okay, so this is the answer that is spit out to you. 1, 0, 0, -2, 0, 1, 0, 7, 0, 0, 1, 3. What that means, okay, remember this is x, this is y, this is z. Okay, these are just numbers. Okay? So 1x equals -2, so just so you can interpret it correctly, y equals 7, and then z equals 3. And it's giving you those 3 answers from a system of 3 equations with 3 variables. So that's RREF. It's an awesome way to find solutions to systems of equations. Okay, so you remember also in section 7.2 we use inverse matrices, and so that's another thing you can do to find solutions. And again, I don't care how you find your solutions, I just want you to find them, right? So I'm going to give you another option. You can use RREF every single time if you want to, or here's just another option. It's called inverse matrices. Okay? This is what you're going to do. You're going to do inverse matrix A times matrix B on your calculator. So I just have to help you get that set up. It's just a different way of finding your answers. So matrix A, okay, is the coefficients. So it's 2, -3, 2, and -2. So notice the difference between this and the previous example. Here, we're using inverse matrices. We just do the coefficients of the variables in one matrix. Okay? Matrix B are these numbers over here, 0, 10. So they're, and then to solve for x and y, this is what you type in. So you have to get these into your calculator, and then you type this in. You do matrix A inverse times matrix B. And it will give you answers. And it'll give you a number, and it'll give you a number. Okay, and those are going to be your answers for x and y. Okay, so it's just a different way of doing it using that inverse matrix method. And so I'll show you that. Okay, so here we are again, and I need to type in matrix A. So I'm going to edit that as a 2 by 2 this time, and it is 2, -3, 2, -2 as my 2 by 2. And then I'll enter in my matrix B. It is a 2 by 1, so I'm going to edit matrix B. Okay. And it's just 0, 10, which I have in there. Okay. So again, I'll quit here. Everything I'm going to do for operations, I do from this plain screen where you add, subtract, multiply, and divide. So I'm going to do second matrix A. Then I use this little inverse key right here, the x with a little -1 like we did before, times second matrix B. There's matrix B, okay? So there we go. We've got matrix A inverse times matrix B. You hit enter, and it gives you 15, 10. So a very streamlined answer. 15 is X, 10 is Y. Okay, so again, what that means is X is 15, Y is 10. Those are your two variables. If you substitute back in, of course, it should work. 2 times 15 is 30, minus 3 times 10, 30. 30 minus 30 is 0. So it definitely works. It's just a different way of getting you to that answer. And you get to pick, okay? Again, it doesn't matter to me how you are finding answers. Just find answers and practice using matrices to find those answers. I know a lot of people like the RREF. Whoa, this is not the right assignment. I thought I had updated that assignment. So let me just quick check on what that assignment is supposed to be. Sorry about this. The assignment is supposed to be page 552. Numbers 11, 35, 49, and 79. I apologize for not having that correct the first time. Okay. Page 552, number 11, number 35, number 49, and number 79. So all odds, so you should be able to check your answers on that one. Okay, again, good luck to you guys. Contact me when you need to.